Started? Okay, great. Okay, it's 8 o'clock, so we'll start today's wine talk, Mid-Autumn Festival special. I would like to say a quick welcome message to everybody for joining us on this special day to this Mid-Autumn Wine Legend Food and Wine and Poetry talk delivered by Janet Wang, and I will introduce Janet Wang slightly later. And this is an event co-hosted by China National Tourist Office London, Cambridge China Centre, and Wine Peak. My name is Jinzhao Li. I'm the director of Cambridge China Centre. Before we pass on to Jenny, start today's wonderful talk, we have a special guest joining us today, who is Ms. Xue Ling, Director of China National Tourist Office London, who is a co-host of today's event and also is part of a 3-month special event. We would like to invite Ms. Xue Ling to say a few words and also tell us more about this 3-month online campaign.
Thank you, Jinzhao. Thank you, Janet. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. China National Tourist Office is very happy to work with Cambridge China Centre, presenting today's live event of Festival China, Mid-Autumn Festival. It's about food, wine, and poetry talk given by Janet Wang. Festival China is part of a 3-month campaign, all under one moon, which one may also discover a creative China, a wider China, a collaborative China, and a historical China. And I think perhaps we will find all of the above elements in Janet's talk this evening, which will bridge peoples with different cultural backgrounds in a simple, easy, and enjoyable way. We will follow her stories about the historical and cultural connotations of classical poetry, fine wine, folklore, and even the philosophy of mutual learning between East and West. I look forward to the journey with Janet this evening, exploring China with mooncake, wine, and poetry. So thank you, Cambridge China Centre, and thank you, Janet, for joining All Under One Moon campaign. Please stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Xue Ling. Thank you for that very warm welcome. Jinzhao, you're on mute, I think.
Thank you, Ms. Xue. Sorry, I was muted myself. Ms. Xue just mentioned that today's wine talk is part of the 3-month online campaign called All Under One Moon. And it's lots of wonderful, over 40 online events and celebrations. If you want to find out more, the first QR code is the landing page with all the information about the upcoming events, including Mid-Autumn celebrations. And also the second QR code is if you want to get notified of all upcoming cultural events, that you can subscribe to our newsletter, or if you want to join in the WeChat group, particularly on these wine topics, the third QR code. You can see from the poster, today's topic is Mid-Autumn Festival, food, wine, poetry, and really traditions and legends and all the people celebrating it. I cannot wait passing on to Janet to start our talk tonight. And our audience, at later part of the wine talk, we would like to enjoy everybody to switch on your audio and video. We can carry on drinking and chatting. And also today, if you answer the questions in WeChat, in the Facebook page, answer the quick question covered by today's talk correctly, you have opportunity to win some Go Panda Chinese wines. Okay, without further ado, if you have a glass of something in hand, we would like to welcome Janet Wang to start our talk tonight. Janet.
Thank you, Jinzhao. Thank you very much. And happy Mid-Autumn Festival, everyone. So today, I don't know if where you are, whether the weather is good, but hopefully you can see clear sky with a bright full moon, and that's certainly what I was able to see just a moment ago. So that's very good. So tick box 1 is whether you have had a chance to admire the full moon today. So the full moon, actually, you know, of course, the moon is full once a month. So why do we particularly celebrate the Mid-Autumn Festival at this particular time? It is because this moon is the harvest moon. It's the full moon closest to the autumn equinox, which is 秋分 in the Chinese interval, you know, climatic interval based on the lunisolar calendar. So at this time of the year, the moon appears particularly bright and round. So we have a saying, 月到中秋分外明, which is describing the mid-autumn moon somehow seems particularly bright and round. And in fact, there's a reason for it, because at the moment, this part of the year, the moon rises almost at sunset, right? So the moon rises quite early. So it appears quite near to us on the horizon. So it tends to look bigger, right? And we notice them earlier in the evening. And also around this time, the autumn breeze is setting in. So with the cooling of the temperature, the air quality becoming drier, that also means the air is drier, less fog, less cloud, and therefore, you know, the clarity of the moon is also enhanced, right? So those are the reasons why this particular full moon tends to appear much brighter, larger, and fuller to us, right? And that is the moon that we celebrate coincide with the harvest season. So historically, the Mid-Autumn Festival was to celebrate the harvest, to give thanks to gods and ancestors who have blessed us for the abundance of the year. So it's certainly first and foremost very tightly related to the agricultural calendar, right? So giving thanks, celebrating the fact that we are able to feast, you know, is an important factor of this festival. And then, of course, the Chinese, perhaps, I think the Chinese are extremely interested in the symbolism of the moon, right? The fact that the moon waxes and wanes, you know, it brings us a lot of association with sort of the Taoist notion that things are always forever changing. You know, the fullness will give way to become less perfect, and then out of the imperfection, the moon will fill up the sky again to become round and complete again. So this cyclical nature of the waxing and waning of the moon have always been a fascinating subject for the Chinese, for poetry, for art, for literature, and for philosophy. You know, there's a lot of connotation and connection attached to the fact that moon is full and possibly the fullest of the year during this mid-autumn. And therefore, this is the festival where we emphasize on family unity, you know, reunion with family, gathering with friends and loved ones is a key part of this festival, right? So on the one hand, you have gathering of loved ones. On the other hand, you have the Thanksgiving for abundance and harvest. So if you put those two together, you know, inevitably it means an excuse to eat and drink well, right? So again, you know, a common theme in Chinese festivals tend to be the eating and drinking of fine foods and wine. So again, mid-autumn is a perfect opportunity for that, right? And of course, when you look at the moon, you'll notice shades, brightness and shades, right? So people would like to guess what those shady parts of the moon would represent. And if you look at the shadow of the moon, it's not difficult to imagine people will start to talk, to tell stories, right? The shadow of the moon probably represents a beautiful goddess, right? And next to her, there seems to be a rabbit as well. So all these shades seems to be giving way to imagination and folklore. So I think a lot of you probably know the story of the moon goddess Chang'e, right? Chang'e, the earliest mention of this story comes from the book of Huainanzi. Huainanzi is a compilation of very ancient stories and writings in philosophy, and a collection of lots of writings, but it was compiled around 139 BC. And Chang'e's story first emerged out of this compilation. And it's sort of a melancholy story. So Chang'e is a beautiful lady, and she had a very handsome and heroic husband, right, called Hou Yi. But somehow, you know, spoiler alert, you know, the story doesn't end happily for them, because they were parted. One remained on earth, the other one somehow became the moon goddess. And I'm sure most of you know how it happened. But I just want to pause here at the moment. So Chang'e's husband, one of his most heroic deed was to shoot down 9 suns in the sky, right? So the story goes that at one point there were 10 suns in the sky scorching the earth. So people could not live because all the crops were destroyed, you know, there were drought and people were dying of thirst. And so Hou Yi, being an excellent archer, he shot down 9 of the suns and just left 1 remaining in the sky. And that's why now we have 1 sun, and it serves us perfectly well, right? So I remember when I was young, I always sort of thought, hang on a minute, why is it that there are 10 suns in the sky? You know, at this point in the story, you know, I feel this hasn't been explained to me properly. Why is it that there were 10 suns in the sky? So I think today I would like to tell you the more complete story of the moon goddess. So we need to rewind a little bit and realize that actually there's another moon goddess, apart from Chang'e, the one that we all know about. The original moon goddess is actually Changxi. So Changxi is one of the wives of Di Qun. He was like a Zeus in Greek god. He's like the ancestral god of all. You know, he's the original god of the universe. So he had a wife called Changxi, and she gave birth to 12 moons. So she had 12 children, and they were all moons. Right, so Changxi was the original moon goddess, and she was her story comes from the classic of mountains and oceans, right? This was an earlier compilation of ancient stories compiled around 475 BC. And she was, her title was the mother of 12 moons, but also the moderator of yin yang. So her role is to make sure things in the universe work in balance and in harmony, right? And she has these 12 sons, and every night she would bathe them in the ocean. And then every night, one of them will go up to the sky, right? So it's a beautiful way of managing the universe. You know, she bathes all her children, and each of them takes turn to grace the sky. So Changxi was the original moon goddess. And in fact, she has an opposite. Actually, while we're on this subject of 12 moons, I'd just like to pose a question for you to think about what 12 moon means, right? 12个月, 12个月. When we say 12 moons in Chinese, so 月 is moon. So what does 12个月 mean to us, right? So have a think about that. And then now let's look at her opposite, who is another goddess called Xi He. So Xi He was another wife of this Zeus-like god, Di Qun. So he had two wives, right? One gave birth to 12 moons and the other gave birth to 10 sons, right? And again, Xi He's role was again to bathe each of them in the ocean. And then each day she would drive a chariot and bring one of the sons to the sky. So all the sons would also take turns. And just also to mention, 10 sons, 10个日, 日 is sun in Chinese. 10个日 is 一旬. 旬 in Chinese is an interesting concept. So 旬 means 10 days. Okay, so 10 days. So the sun represents the day. So 10 suns represent one 旬, right? And a month has 3 旬, right? We have the upper, the middle, and the lower 旬 makes a month, right? So 上旬, 中旬, 下旬 makes 1 month, which is 1月, right? So I hope you all this is to say, actually, all these stories was our ancient ancestors' way of explaining humans' relationship with the time of the year, and with geography. You know, what they observe of the natural orders of the sunrise and the moonrise, and the number of months that they could count, and number of days that they could count. So all these ancient stories were encapsulating the very ancient ways our ancestors were working out the times of the year and their significance, right? So in fact, a lot of people think that the Chinese traditional calendar is a lunar calendar. That's slightly incomplete. The Chinese calendar is actually a luni-solar calendar. So our agricultural calendar is based on both the moon phase and the sun phase, right? So the story of Xi He and Changxi, they are essentially the ancestral stories to encapsulate the luni-solar calendar, right? So this is quite interesting. But now let's get back to our original Mid-Autumn Festival story. So now we know where the 10 sons came from, right? So Xi He's job was to every day drive a chariot and take one of her sons up to the sky. But during a period of chaos, the 10 sons decided to go all at once out to the sky, you know, disobeying their mother. They became very naughty, possibly teenagers, you know, so the sons all went up to the sky all at once. And that caused chaos and destruction on earth. And that brought about our hero, Hou Yi, to come and save the world by shooting down 9 of them and leaving only the one in the sky. Right, so for his great service, Hou Yi was rewarded with an immortal elixir by the Empress of the Sky. So he got this elixir of immortality, and when he got this elixir, he was told that the potion had enough for 2 people. So he and his wife, Chang'e, could both take this elixir of immortality, and they could live happily ever after on earth as immortals. But unfortunately, the twist and tragedy of this tale was that when Hou Yi went home with the news of this elixir, he gave this elixir to Chang'e for safekeeping, but then he was called away on another urgent duty, you know, to save some other people, you know, to carry out more heroic deeds before he could return. So he said to Chang'e, you know, wait for me. When I return from my task, let's take this elixir together and we can live as immortals. But during his absence, so this is one version of the story, during his absence, Chang'e became incredibly curious and very lonely. So one day her curiosity got the better of her, and she took a sip of this elixir, and nothing seems to happen. So before she knew it, she took another sip and another sip until the bottle was empty. She drank it all. She drank the whole bottle of elixir of immortality. And the result of that was not only did she become immortal, but because of her overdose, you know, it was designed for 2 people, but she took it all by herself. So the effect of the overdose was that she also became very lightweight. And so she floated all the way up to the moon. And there she remained for eternity, alone by herself. You know, so the tragedy of the story is that, yes, she attained immortality and youthfulness forever, but she lost the love of her life, and she was henceforth forever separated from her true love who remained on earth, right? So that's the melancholy end to this story. And because it's a festival, so, you know, we still want to celebrate a beautiful holiday. So some people thought this story is too sad. Let's make it slightly more fun and entertaining for the children. So the shadow of the moon, another part of it looks like a rabbit. So another version of the story goes, actually, she's not entirely alone. She found a company in a jade rabbit who lives on the moon as well. So there's Chang'e and her jade rabbit who make up the shadows of the moon. And of course, in recent years, if you have been following China's moon landing excursions, you would have known that the lander and the rover in China's space programs are called Chang'e lander and Yutu rover, which are named after this beautiful story of Chang'e and the jade rabbit. Right, so that's, I hope, the full story, and hopefully now you know a question I always had since childhood was why were there 10 suns? And also, you know, in fact there are there's another moon goddess who predates Chang'e as well. So and now let's look at you know, what we are now most familiar as a representation of the moon, you know, in terms of a snack, in terms of a festive cake. So this is a moon cake. So a moon cake is usually made with a pastry and a filling inside. And there are lots of different styles across different parts of China. So usually the most famous is the Cantonese style mooncake. So here we have the Guangshi Yuebing, which is the Cantonese style. So Cantonese style tend to have this very ornate thin pastry, wheat flour pastry with usually a sweet filling like lotus seed paste or red bean paste, sometimes with a salty egg yolk inside to represent the moon. Or even sometimes 2 egg yolks to represent a union of 2 people, you know, to celebrate unity, right? So 2 double yolk is very auspicious as a symbolism. So mooncake is often given as present at this time of year. So Mid-Autumn Festival is one of the most important festivals in China where we give and receive a lot of gifts, right? So mooncakes tend to come in very elaborate and beautiful packagings, right? So Cantonese mooncake is possibly the most popular type of mooncake these days. But there are different types as well in other parts of the region. For example, Su Shi Yuebing, right? From the sort of the Suzhou, Hangzhou area, so eastern coast, northeastern coast of China, where the pastry is thinner, finer, and more fluffy, more layered. And sometimes the filling could be savory or sweet. The idea is the filling should be light, decadent, but not greasy. So they're lighter in texture, right? And sometimes more nutty, occasionally with meat. And then Jingshi Yuebing comes from Beijing, so the capital, right? So again, the pastry needs to be thin, and osmanthus is quite a typical filling in this style of mooncake, because osmanthus flower is a seasonal flower at this time of the year, right? So seasonality is important as well in making mooncakes, right? So with all this amazing varieties of mooncakes, so what would you drink with it, right? So usually I would say for all types of mooncakes, what works quite well is Chinese ice wine, right? Chinese ice wine, because mooncakes are already fairly sweet, most of them. But mooncakes are unusual in that they are sweet, but sometimes they're savory. But they're both considered a dessert, but at the same time, it's actually quite rich and quite greasy occasionally. I mean, it does use oil, right? So it's a decadent, almost oily type of dessert, right? So that's very difficult for pairing with wine, because on the one hand, you have to take care of the sweetness, but you also need to balance out the slight oiliness, you know, the decadence of it. So ice wine is sweet, but it's also has great acidity, which can cut through the greasiness in the mooncake as well. So Chinese ice wine, I think, is a fantastic pairing. And Chinese ice wine, I find, also has an interesting finish where sometimes you can detect this lingering note of tea, you know, like oolong tea, which is very pleasant, because some people prefer to have mooncakes with tea as well. So sometimes I find in the ice wine, you know, on the palate, it's refreshing, it's sweet, it has great acidity, but the lasting sensation of Chinese ice wine sometimes is this smoky oolong tea profile, and that's quite magical, and I think that goes beautifully with mooncake. So if you have the chance, do look out for Chinese ice wine. So ice wine is made very specifically in fairly cold parts of the world, you know, traditionally in Germany, Canada is currently the world's biggest ice wine producer, but historically it's areas around Germany and Austria. But because of global warming, interestingly, Germany no longer can guarantee annual production of ice wine. So ice wine production level have fallen drastically in the old world, in Europe. So Canada is certainly the largest, but China is fastly catching up and will become one of the major ice wine producers in the world. So this is very interesting. So to make ice wine, the grapes need to be naturally frozen on the vines. So they are only picked very late in the season when the temperature drops to -8 degrees. Right, so you can imagine it grows in Liaoning, Jilin, Heilongjiang province. So Liaoning is the largest ice wine producing region in China. So the northern part of China, as you can imagine, are good places to make ice wine. But actually, we also have ice wines in other parts of China. For example, Yili in Xinjiang and parts of Gansu, Shanxi, even Yunnan at high altitude. There are places where you can make ice wine. So here on the map, I've highlighted the provinces where ice wines are found in China. Although this looks a little misleading because not all parts of the provinces are suitable. It's literally pockets, you know, in a location, very specific locations in Xinjiang province and Yunnan province where they are able to make ice wine. So by no means they are made all over the province. but it's definitely something to watch out for if you have the chance. And also what's interesting about Chinese ice wine is that there are certain Chinese native varieties of grapes now being used to make ice wine instead of normally the European wine grape are used to make other types of wine. Ice wine is where China is starting to experiment with a lot of interesting native grapes as well. So very exciting area and great pairing with mooncake. And of course, mooncake, another type I haven't mentioned, which is starting to become trendy only in recent decades, is called snow skin mooncake. Snow skin mooncake are these rather colorful, trendy and innovative types of flavors. You know, they typically have a mochi-like skin, and inside the fillings could be more creative. It could be like yam flavored, matcha flavored, dates, rose, for example, lots of different flavors. So here I have one, which is a rose flavored snow skin mooncake. So yeah, lots of different flavors, very trendy. And I think for that sort of mooncake, oh, and sometimes they have ice cream filling inside as well. So for this type of mooncake, I think a sparkling wine goes rather nicely with it, because sparkling wines, you know, the bubbles tend to enhance the flavor, the sweetness, and the more subtle fragrances of the snow skin mooncakes. So sparkling wine here, I have showed you a Chinese sparkling wine made in Hebei province by the Great Wall Company for the 2008 Beijing Olympics, actually, because as you may know, sparkling wine is not very popular yet in China. It accounts for less than 1% of the overall wine market at the moment, but it's certainly becoming more popular, especially among the young. So sparkling wine is only just started to make an impact in the Chinese wine industry. And quite frankly, at the moment, I can only count on one hand the number of wineries who make sparkling wine in China. So the ones that I know have commercialized sparkling wines are made mostly in Hebei and Ningxia province. Only 1 or 2 wineries are making them, and Shanxi and Shandong have tiny productions. But this is bound to change, you know, as consumers are becoming more interested in sparkling wine. There's no reason why other regions cannot make it. It's just at the moment, very few wineries can find a commercial reason to make sparkling wine in China. So again, something to watch out for. And okay, so other than mooncakes, of course, you know, this is a time of the year it's a festival where we tend to feast, you know, we tend to eat decadent, luxurious food. And one of the most decadent food around this season is crab. You know, hairy crab is in season. And so the crab season is in full swing and coincides with the Mid-Autumn festival period. So we tend to also see crab being featured in a Mid-Autumn banquet. So when you're having crab, the best alcoholic beverage to go with that will be Huangjiu. Huangjiu is yellow wine, Chinese yellow wine. This is just another name for more traditional grain-based wines that's made in China. And in fact, yellow wine has more than 6,000 years of history in China. And it's an ancestor to Japanese sake, which is much more widely known internationally, right? But Huangjiu essentially was fermenting grains with certain types of fermentation inducer added to the mix. And that's a very specific technology invented in China. And then it was exported to Korea and to Japan and other parts of Southeast Asia as well. So fermented grains is very common, and fermented foods in general are quite common in East Asia, right? And it has a lot of health-giving properties as well. So we tend to say that yellow wine is perhaps the most health-giving alcoholic beverage taken in moderation, right? Because a lot of traditional Chinese medicine, in fact, use yellow wine as a carrier for the medicinal ingredients, right? So wine and medicine have always had a very close link in Chinese culture. And that is why also these days consumers tend to want to know whether the wine they're buying is good for their health. You know, that mentality came from this long association between wine and medicine and health. And eating, you know, the pairing of food with alcoholic beverage, again, is very important from a health perspective. So we say crab, although they are delicious, they are very cooling in nature. You know, it's a very 寒性. So 寒性 food means that it's very cooling, very cold by nature. So when you're eating crab, you need to have something that's warming for your body in order to balance the coldness. So what is warming? 黄酒, yellow wine, is very warming. Right, so it has great affinity with the crab dishes, both from a health perspective and also from a taste perspective, because 黄酒, yellow wine, tend to have very deep, savory, umami, nutty profiles. So that goes really, really well with the crab flavor, the 咸鲜, we call 咸鲜, so this umami profile. So the wine has the 鲜味, and the crab also has this umami 咸鲜 flavor, right? So they go perfectly as a pairing. So as an aside, you should never drink beer with crab, right? From a health perspective, this is because beer is also by nature, we consider very cooling. Right, so if you're drinking beer plus eating crab, it's too cold for your body to handle, right? So don't ever drink beer while eating crab. That's the general health advice according to Chinese culinary culture. So yellow wine are made in many parts of China, but I've highlighted some of the most important regions where yellow wine culture are most prominent, right? So as you can see, they tend to be along the eastern side of China and along the coast. So those are the most, some of the most famous yellow wines come from these regions. So maybe Zhejiang, out of all of them, are most famous because Shaoxing wine is from Zhejiang and is a geographic indication. It's a protected geographic indication for the yellow wine from the Shaoxing region, and the water they use must be from this one particular lake called the Jianhu, right? So it's very, very specific how you can make a wine that can be labeled as Shaoxing wine, right? So yellow wine is has a profile that's similar to sherry, actually. So if you enjoy sherry, if you never had yellow wine but enjoy sherry, you know, please go look out for some yellow wines to try in the future. And another sort of auspicious dish that we eat around mid-autumn is called 团团圆圆肉丸子, so meatballs basically. So 团圆 in Chinese means to unite. You know, 圆 is circle, round. 团 is also to round, to group, to come together. So 团圆 means to reunite, to unite, and to be in harmony, right? So this dish is auspicious because the meatball kind of represents a roundness, you know, 团圆. So this is called 团圆丸子. So auspicious meatball dish for this Mid-Autumn Festival, where we are celebrating coming together of family and friends. So with a meatball, meaty, hearty dish with a rich sauce, what shall we have? We could have a fruity dry red. So this, by the way, these 2 bottles of wines, I think Jingzhao mentioned, are up for grabs at the end of the show. So a dry, fruity dry red like this, 果香型, you know, with soft tannins but fruit forward character, would go very nicely with a hearty, meaty dish like this meatball. Okay, so that's our feasting taken care of. So inevitably, we need to know that in the wine category, China is gaining footholds in the international stage. So here is a map of where European style wines are made across China. And as you can see, you know, they are fairly widespread already, but mainly most of the wine regions are based in the north of China. This particular wine that we've got, the Gogo Panda wine, they're from Ningbo, where if you can see the number is labeled 8 and 9 here in the middle north of China. Right, so after feasting and drinking, I think the evening tends to descend into a state of inebriation. And traditionally, the state of drunkenness is celebrated in China because this is the state, according to the Taoist, you know, is our most natural state. So we feel free, we are more open, more creative. And so historically, why do we know so much about the Mid-Autumn Festival and how it's celebrated down the ages? Is because there, you know, many of the poets across the dynasties have left lots of poetry written, dedicated to the moon, to the full moon. So, for example, if we're going to mention poetry, we must mention Li Bai, the Tang Dynasty poet, and possibly China's most celebrated and beloved poet. And we call him the wine saint, right? And the poetry saint. You know, he's famous for writing poetry when he was drunk. In fact, he couldn't write without being drunk first, right? So this is a lovely poem that he wrote, inviting the moon to join him for his drink, right? So raising my cup, I invite the bright moon to join me. She brings along my shadow and makes us a party of 3. So this is a lovely imagery of Li Bai actually drinking alone, right? So you can imagine, as we were saying, this Mid-Autumn Festival is about uniting with family and friends. So drinking alone is actually quite a melancholy state to be in, you know. So the poet is lamenting the fact that he's drinking alone and he has no company, and therefore he's asking the bright full moon to be his company. And the moon said, okay, I'm coming with your shadow. So the 3 of them are drinking. So in a way, it's a rather sweet and optimistic poem, despite the fact that Li Bai is all alone, right? And another very famous poem dedicated to the full moon, especially at mid-autumn, is written by Zhang Jiuling. And in fact, this whole series of programs is dedicated to this theme of sharing the same moment wherever you are, no matter where you are around the world. We can share the same moment because we can share the beauty of the same moon. So this, these two lines, a bright moon rises above the ocean, a moment is shared by all under heaven, really encapsulates this, the Mid-Autumn Festival, the essence of this festival, which is all about the fact that we want to be thinking about those we love, whether we are together or we are apart. You know, we can share the same moment tonight, you know, because the moon is what unites us all. And another very famous poem around this time of the year for Mid-Autumn is Prelude to the Water Melody, written by Su Shi, Song Dynasty, Su Shi. He was a great poet, calligrapher, also politician, food critic. he was just a multi-talented all-rounder, and he wrote perhaps one of the best known poem dedicated to the Mid-Autumn Festival. I think the first two lines, the first two and last two lines of this poem are universally known in China. So the poem starts with raising a question: how often does a bright moon grace the sky? Raising my wine cup to the heavens, I asked. Right, so this is it's a common gesture at Mid-Autumn that we always have to start by looking up, observing the moon. Like I was asking you earlier in the evening, have you had the chance to look at the moon yet? Because of this poem, this has become part of our cultural national habit. You know, at Mid-Autumn, you inevitably have to ask this question, you know, raising a wine cup to the heaven and addressing the full moon. And the last paragraph of this poem is also incredibly moving. So the poem ends on these lines: we know of sorrow and joy, parting and meeting. The moon knows shade and shine, waxing and waning. Such is the imperfect ways of the world, and have always been so. I only wish we may be blessed with health and longevity. Though thousands of miles apart, we could share the beauty of the same moon. Right, so these are, again, lines that everybody in China could recite, and it really beautifully captures you know, our common wish, you know, at this time of the year is to send a message to people who are not with us, to say, I hope you're well. I hope you are blessed with health and longevity, so that even though we are apart, we could share the beauty of the same moon, to know that you are well and enjoying the same sight as me. Right? So these are the everlasting legacies of Chinese poets for this festival. Right, so I hope you are sufficiently inspired to start some drinking and eating and possibly poetry reciting with us. So I hope to follow will get more interactive. And if you want to know more about the history and culture of China and wine in China, this is my book, The Chinese Wine Renaissance, and it talks a lot more into more depth about different regions, different customs, and also the historical backdrop of different types of wines in China, and why is it that wine is enjoying a renaissance again in recent years, and where it's going as well. So I hope that would be sufficient to get you curious, right? So if you want to keep in touch, that's my details. And we have also a WeChat group as well. And you can scan that QR code to join our WeChat group. And I'm also on social media, and my website is winepeak.com. So please do feel free to drop me a line, and hopefully we can now open up the screens and yeah, and just enjoy some mooncakes and wine together.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Janet. Thank you. That's a beautiful, beautiful sharing. Thank you. So everybody, I see lots of old friends, familiar names in the audience list. Now it's time for us to carry on chatting and drinking. So if you got any questions or want to catch up, just feel free to switch on your audio and video. In the meantime, I want to say a few words about Janet. Janet is really a lovely girl with lots of talents. Actually, she studied computing at University of Cambridge, and then she decided to work with a bank as a banker for about 10 years. And then she fell in love with wine, particularly Chinese wine. And now she is an expert on wine. And her knowledge on Chinese wine, her passion on Chinese wine really is second to none in the UK. And also today, Jenny shared with us the traditions, the legends, the food, wine pairing, and the poetry. I hope you notice that all the poetry translation is done by Janet. Well done.
Thank you, Jinja. Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoy the stories of Changxi and Xihe, the moon goddess and the sun goddess. Really, I didn't have that piece of information, so I always ask the same question: why suddenly there became 10 suns in the sky?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that was always some little detail that I thought, this is curious. Yeah, and I just delved a bit deeper and realized actually there's another moon goddess that we don't normally talk about. So that's interesting.
Great, thank you. And yeah, just welcome to join us with the final stage of carry on drinking, chatting, and mooncake eating. And we have Miss Xueling from CNTO London with that there. Would you like to say a few words about today's wine talk and the All Under One Moon campaign?
Yes, do. Thank you, Janet. It's been, also another, very, very impressive talk about wine. And maybe I'm not good at drinking wine. I was born in a seaside city, with a lot of beer. But of course, I never drink beer. I only know. The thing is, I think I started with your talk about wine is because of the history and the poetry. That's really, is something fascinating and which is a bit different angle from me to approach this wine history, philosophy, the process of, appreciating the wine. So thank you so much. I think I'm still a freshman, and I'm still continuing with what you are going to talk, and anybody else. It's really a great pleasure to have you in All Under One Moon and Cambridge China Center. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Xueling. Thank you so much. It's really my pleasure to have you again joining us, and thank you so much for your kind words and your enthusiasm. I love it when people say I don't actually drink, but it's still interesting. For me, that's the ultimate compliment. But yeah, you're spot on. I think quite frankly, for me as well, the deep fascination with wine started from the cultural angle and the fact that we can talk about wine with our friends from around the world, and we have a common language around wine, but we can talk about everybody's different background, different experience, and different cultural heritage. Yes. So I think it's a great connector. So it's fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. You changed my view about wine. All that I think is all connected with men. Nothing. You turned out to be a girl, a beautiful talking about wine.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yes, absolutely.
Janet, I have a couple of comments.
Hello, Mervyn. Hi.
Hi. I should be saying 中秋节快乐.
中秋节快乐.
I wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, in Western culture, we have the man in the moon. We have as opposed to Chang'e, we have a man in the moon. You know that, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what happened to him. And the second point is, I'm studying Tang poetry, and it's so lovely to hear the translations. But even more beautiful is to hear those first two lines. Maybe next time you read them in Mandarin.
Yeah, I would.
That would be really good.
I would be delighted to.
Because the cadences of the words, the signs of the characters, they make the poem.
Yes.
And the translation, you lose a little.
Of course, yeah.
In the translation.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you're completely right. Actually, it's interesting that you mentioned the comparing, Chinese legends with Western ones. Yeah, I was looking through this. I mean, maybe next year we'll do a bit more about that. It's really fascinating. It's like this character, the father of the suns and the moons. In Greek mythology, is Zeus, isn't it? Zeus is the father of Artemis and Apollo. And we have in China, we have this Di Qun character who also can't help himself, seems to have several wives and gave birth to lots of moons and suns. So it's all very interesting. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, that's one of, and the sun chariot, it's Greek mythology, Hindu mythology. There's a lot of parallels with this notion that is a sun chariot, someone driving a chariot and taking the sun above the sky. It's uncanny. It's really fascinating to when you delve into these ancient mythologies and find
when you're learning another language like Mandarin, to be able to dive into the language through poetry, through music, through history.
Yeah.
It makes it much more easier to learn.
Yeah, it's more interesting as well. Yeah, no, I'm so pleased. Yeah.
So thank you. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, thank you, Marvin. I hope you're drinking something interesting.
My wife doesn't let me drink.
All right.
I may have a soft drink.
Yes, it helps with learning poetry, I can assure you.
When does the poetry session start?
Oh, I think that's a different program. I think, I think Lu Laoshi will probably tell you. Yeah.
Hi, we have Coco there joining us.
Hi, Coco.
Thank you for sharing the story, and my kids and I learn a lot about the story about 中秋节. Thank you so much, and
thank you.
Yeah, we have a wonderful night with you.
Thank you, Coco. Thank you for joining us.
中秋节快乐！
哦，小朋友，不好意思，
中秋节快乐！
中秋节快乐！吃了月饼了吗？ You had lots of mooncakes. Yeah. Oh wow, that's pretty. Oh wow, very nice.
No, very delicious. Yeah.
Yeah, good. I really like mooncakes. It's one of those things that I find. Curiously, it is something that's only made around this time of year, because I thought something like that must be commercialized all year round, but it's not true. It's only available around this time. So I tend to, overdose a little bit on mooncakes. Yeah. Hi, Bill. It's good to see you too.
Hello. Yes, you as well. It was a very good, interesting presentation. I thought it was very, very good. I've been looking for the moon all day.
Is it cloudy?
Yeah, it was very good. But you can see it's got a very strong significance, because like on the social media, WeChat and other one, so many pictures are of the moon.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just pictures of the moon. So it's such a big significance that probably us people in the UK don't really realise that, to be honest.
It's actually, a huge festival in China, but also across Asia. I think, there's, of course, Japan, Korea, and Southeast Asia, even India, they have some other, a festival dedicated to Harvest Moon as well. I think it's something that's shared by a lot of cultures because of the relationship between the Harvest Moon and the harvest. So.
And also the poetry and everything that you did. It was very good, very well put together, I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Good to see you. You're well and great. Excellent.
It's great. Last Mid-Autumn Day, we did a similar theme because last year on the Mid-Autumn Day, it's National Poetry Day in the UK.
Exactly.
So that's really our inspiration to bring poetry into this. And really for Bill, it's the second time listening to some of the poetry. I think he started to get some hint, some clue from it.
So actually, that's a good point. Mervyn, last year we did I did some more poetry reading, so I actually read in Chinese and in English the full poems. So if you want, I can send you the link to the recording of that if you like. So
that would be really interesting.
So last year
I'm actually a poet myself.
Okay.
The book, and I do recitals of poetry.
Oh wow, great.
I do it in Spanish.
Oh wow, okay.
Sometimes I've read some of the Li Bai poems in Mandarin.
That's so
please.
Absolutely. We'll definitely. I'll find the recording of that and send it to you.
You can have a look at my book.
Yes. What is it called? Oh, Dairy Boy. Childhood in Pictures and Poems. Oh, lovely. Okay. Is that you?
我不知道。
我不知道。
那个照片很久。
很久以前。
No.
Very good.
Anyway, you can look it up on Google. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Great.
So my Mandarin took a left turn and went to mark poetry. So it's a long story. It's a long story. Listen, I've got to go. Really enjoyed it. 回头见.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you very much.
Yes, we have wines, Chinese special edition Go Panda wines too for grab. So if you answer a very simple question covered by today's talk in Facebook, you have a chance to win that. And
it's very good wine, by the way.
Joining us. Thank you, Janet. It's such a interesting, enriching, and lighthearted event. We really love it. It makes the today Mid-Autumn Festival Day very special.
So great to see you.
Normally the wine talks are on Sunday evenings, so just some occasion for us to relax online, do a toast. And today's special is on Tuesday. We are doing the physical center in Cambridge where we can get together over wine, food, poetry, culture, all nice, lovely elements. Hopefully, we got the planning application permission finally. So hopefully in January before Chinese New Year, we'll be able to meet up face to face, enjoy all those lovely elements of life. And before that, we just want to wish everybody a happy Mid-Autumn Day, and do tune into the 3-month culture events of All Under One Moon. I will share my screen again. If you want to scan the QR code, please do. Thank you, Janet. Thank you.
中秋快乐。
中秋
Good
快
to see
乐。
you, Coco.
中秋快乐。
中秋快乐。
Thank you, Miss.
Thank you.
Miss, for joining us there.
Hi, Miss.